Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hairy News. Kia ora, Chewy.
Kia ora, Pat.
I'm doing three things at once. Because I always do three things at once. How you doing, man? What's going on? Good day? Oh, it's Thursday, isn't it? Day off tomorrow. How's life? What's happening in Chewy land?
It is Thursday. Look, it's been a very, very busy fucking week for me, I tell you. I am just exhausted. What was that?
That was me.
What was that?
Keep talking.
That was very weird because that was my voice. A very, very busy week. I've told people I work in a phone shop. iPhone launch is tomorrow.
All right.
And it is all I have been doing this week is selling people iPhones, which is interesting. I thought this year would be pretty quiet just with the economic situation and everything like that, but it doesn't seem to be for this particular thing. So people have money for phones.
Interesting. Hey, I'm really excited about tonight's show. One of the things we're going to look at tonight, and it was a story, to be fair, that I saw on RNZ. What's happening within families 6 months after this coalition of chaos government started cutting disability in the disability sector. We've got Katie Thomas joining us. Now, let me just show you. Katie Thomas is not really a friend of the show, but I've podcasted with her a couple of times before. She's got an incredible story about using medicinal marijuana and being an advocate in that field. And so she's coming on tonight because her son is disabled, and I've already heard some of the story through the RNZ connection, but I think it's really important not for us to go 6 months ago, oh, cuts, this is going to be terrible, but then to go, like 6 months later, how does this actually look and feel to the community where the cuts are? Not just to forget about it, to actually go back and say, now, the government was saying this is all going to be fine. How is it on your end? So when I say I'm excited to have that conversation, it's not an exciting conversation. It's an important conversation, and I'm pleased to be bringing an important conversation tonight. Also, we're going to have a look at a couple of short clips. Prime Minister, it's funny, whenever I put the word pissy, the Prime Minister getting pissy, it rates really well on YouTube. So there might be another clip coming up talking about the Prime Minister getting a bit pissy when he had to defend, I don't know, has National been caught with their hand in the gang numbers cookie jar? Because all of a sudden, Chewy, 800 gang members have disappeared from the official list.
You could have... This would have been a much media story if you go, all of a sudden, 800 gang members have disappeared.
But, we've been rabbiting on here about one of the things this government will do, it's an opinion, is they will change the way they count negative stats to make their stats look better. Is this one of those situations or not? We shall wait and see. And also, Tova O'Brien was speaking to Paul Goldsmith, and he's had to admit that the government has failed to assess human rights impact of last-minute gang changes. Well, of course, the gang...
Shit.
Yeah, but he's had to admit it, and it's an interesting thing to look at. And the other thing was, we said we'd touch board on this today, the story coming out of mighty Manawatu about this toll road. Now, I kind of see this, Chewy, as a quintessential example of how this government's going to operate, giving away a whole bunch of money in tax cuts into landlords, and then going, holy shit, where are we going to find this money? I did a tweet today that was something like, that's right, New Zealand, no more taxes, but we've got, higher rego costs. We've got road user charges on EVs. We've got tolls. Other people pointed out other things in there as well. So you've got all these things being added in. And the only thing that I can see, and you can correct me if you're right, Troy, the only thing that I can see the reason they've been added in is because they're short of revenue and they might need to find a bit of cash from somewhere. And this is how they're doing it. It's just shocking. So no taxes, but tolls. No taxes, but RUCs. No taxes, but increasingly, and someone said no taxes, but we're charging again for prescriptions. You know, if you start going through the lists of little things here and there that they've added in, you're like, okay, so are we really better off? My $3.50 a week tax cut. Yeah, we'll see. So we'll have a look at that as well. In fact, why don't we just keep going with that, because we have a guest with us. We have two guests tonight. We have Katie live at about 9:30, and right now we're going to welcome to the show, friend of the show, Kieran McAnulty. Kieran, good evening, sir.
How's it going?
Good boss.
Very well. It's going very, very well. Yes, I'm excited about tonight's show. The problem is, normally, Kieran, when I say to Chewy, I don't know how tonight's show's going to go, it normally ends up being a cracker. So if I'm going, I'm excited about tonight's show, Chewy, I just hope it's not going to be a pile of shit by the end of it. I don't hope.
Well, they're good topics, so you're on to a good start.
Yeah, good to know. Well, let's do this. This is from last night, but I do want to set the scene. It's only a 2-minute story. How about the three of us together watch this story, which is about the road being tolled, that road that's already been paid for, now being tolled, and then we can have a bit of a chat about it.
Kick in the guts. That's how concerned locals in the Tararua district are describing a proposal to put tolls on a long-awaited new highway. Major slips permanently closed State Highway 3 through the Manawatu Gorge in 2017. Its replacement between Woodville and Palmerston North is due to open next year.
Well, can I just clarify something with you, Kieran? Is this going to be the only road to get through there, or is it an alternate new road?
So there was a State Highway 3 through the Manawatu Gorge.
Yep.
And after a series of slips, it was deemed that the road couldn't be recovered, so it was closed permanently.
Yep.
And so there were two alternative roads, essentially glorified dirt tracks. One's called the Saddle Road and one's called the Pahiatua Track. And at that stage, they were both council roads. So they were being used instead of the state highway. And so as local MP, I managed to get NZTA to agree to take over the maintenance, so at least the council didn't have to do it. They were never designed for that level of roading. In fact, the national government's original plan was to just say, oh, well, there's a road there, that'll do. It's like, no, hold on. So anyway, that's another story. But so there are two alternates. They're not safe. They're taking a lot of money to maintain every single year because they were never designed for this type of traffic. And the problem is if the toll goes on, they'll still be used.
And when you say they're council roads, does that mean this is therefore the only kind of state highway, the only central government road? Yeah, okay.
And it's
so there are a couple of goat tracks, but this is the only kind of nationally operated road of national significance. We could come up with a new term there.
Yeah,
that's what we're
the
saying.
only state highway connecting east and west of the Lower North Island.
All right, we'll keep going.
But as Sam Ollie found out at a community meeting, motorists are angry over the potential cost.
These Tararua locals unhappy and at times unable to be silenced.
Go put your toll where the sun won't shine. Just 1 moment.
Some so frustrated they were unwilling to leave the stage.
Folks, don't be blindsided.
After 7 years of construction, just months out from the Manawatu Tararua Highway's opening, tolling for the $620 million project has been proposed. $4.30 for cars, double that for large trucks.
So that's $17 a day if you're in a truck going there and back. So that's going to be, what's that? 17 times 5 is $85 a week. So that's over $4,000 a year if you're a truck going backwards and forwards. If you're a delivery guy and you're doing it a few times, gosh, who knows? It's huge.
Overwhelming sense of betrayal, anger, disbelief, and a kick in the guts.
It is not right, it is outrageous, and it simply should not happen.
Commuters making 5 round trips on the road each week could pay more than $2,000 in tolls each year in a district where the median salary is just $26,000.
It is cruel, it is wrong, and it'll be on your heads if it's allowed to go ahead.
Yeah.
There's huge struggle already with people even trying to get to Palmerston North.
The NZTA says it had to propose tolls because of the coalition government's requirements.
Under this government policy statement, the clear expectation has been to consider tolling.
But ultimately, Cabinet will have the final say.
If that money isn't raised, that's less money for road maintenance, it's less money for building other roads.
I think Chewy, this is one of those moments where I think they must have cut in a bit late, and because the first thing he would have said is that's less money for tax cuts and that's less money for landlords. But TVNZ must have clipped that and just accidentally cut that beginnings off. So
just an oversight, Pat.
Yeah, just a short oversight.
Roading infrastructure across the country, and so this is a proposal.
That piece of infrastructure, you have already paid for that with
your
taxes.
Local councillors now expect thousands of people will submit these forms before consultation closes next month. Residents now planning a protest too.
NZTA, we will not pay.
The Emir demanding a government U-turn. Sam Ollie, One News.
So you were there, yeah, Karen?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, give us the dirty lowdown. What were you hearing when you were there? I mean, we can see what the vibe is, but expand on it for us.
Well, the meeting was originally billed as an opportunity for people to come in and find out how to make a submission, and they booked a supper room on the side of the stadium, and they figured out pretty quickly they had to open up the whole stadium, and it was chocker. Literally over 500 people. There was standing room only. It was the biggest public meeting I've ever seen, and when you consider the size of Woodville, it's massive turnout.
Yeah. Well, so and the general vibe, that was a fairly accurate representation. Was there anyone there who was like, no, this is how we got to go? Was there literally anyone saying, we accept this, we understand?
Hand on heart, didn't hear a single person speak in favour of the proposal. There was a real feeling of genuine anger. People were furious at this proposal, and they're reasonable people. They recognise that tolls play a role, and that they have a function moving forward. And I said on the night, look, if a new road was going to be built, and if the only way to get across the line is to have a toll, so that's the difference between this new road getting built or not, then sure. You don't bring it on a road that's a replacement for a broken state highway, bump it on 9 months before it's completed, when a community's been waiting 7 years without a state highway to connect it to its place of work. Because so many people from sort of northern Wairarapa, Tararua, southern Hawke's Bay go to Palmy to go to the hospital, to do their shopping, to go to work. And you heard the median income in the Tararua district, 26 grand a year. Yeah. And the government wants these people to pay over $40 a week just to get to work. Come on.
Did Waka Kotahi speak on the night?
Yeah, they did. And Linda, who you saw there in the TV show, I felt really sorry for her because at the end of the day, NZTA are doing what they've been told to. The government changed the rules in June and instructed NZTA to explore tolls on all new roads, and they've included this one in that. And there were a lot of questions, a lot of political questions aimed at the government, and the two national MPs didn't get up and made Linda from NZTA face the heat, and I thought that was pretty gutless, frankly.
The reason I ask that is you've said two things. You've said you didn't hear anyone speak positively of it. So are we to understand that therefore even Waka Kotahi weren't that excited about speaking positively about this thing that they're doing?
Well, I mean, public servants are pretty professional, so they just say it as it is. They spelled out that the government in June instructed them to do this, and that's why they're doing it. They've said that because they've been instructed, they've looked at it, they've assessed that there's going to be X amount required over maintenance over the next number of years, and that's why they've landed at $4.30. We've asked for a tolling assessment, so has the council, so have a number of other interested parties, and the government still hasn't released that information, which is an unusual thing when you're consulting. But look, at the end of the day, NZTA are doing what they're told to do. And there's a really big difference. I've had my beef with NZTA over the years. There was a stretch of road between Greytown and Featherston, which I don't believe should have been reduced to 80k, but that was their call. This is different. This is Cabinet's call. This is a political decision. And ultimately, the minister should have been there, frankly, and fronted up as to why he believes the toll should be there. The National Party local MPs were sort of in an impossible situation because if they said that they supported the toll, they would have been run out of town. But if they spoke opposing it, even though that would be reflecting the clear view of the community, then they would be speaking against their government. So they were in a difficult position, but fair play to them. They turned up at least. But yeah, the fact of the matter is, I see they've now said we've spoken to the minister. Well, you know, the views of the community will be reflected in the submissions. Whether they listen to that is another story. And you heard, I may have not heard a single person at the meeting speak in defence of it, but you heard the minister speak in defence of it. And I sat next to the finance minister on TVNZ breakfast this morning, and she spoke in defence of this proposal. So it seems pretty clear to me they've made their mind up, but we're going to have to keep pushing back.
Here's something I was wondering as well. Right. I don't mean to bring you down here, Kieran, but here's the results from the last election. If you have a look, Mike Butterick took it out for National. And if you have a look at the cumulative total between National, ACT, and New Zealand First, you get to maybe 60% of the overall votes. This region voted for this government to do this kind of thing. What are you hearing on the ground about people who voted for these guys that are now basically saying to your people, you can pay twice, guys. You can pay twice for this roads?
Well, the first point I would make is that at no point in the campaign did the National Party say they were going to do this. So I don't want to sound like I'm criticising people for the voting choice they make, because if people vote on the information they've got, and if the National Party are going to hide a bit of information like this, then the only conclusion you can come to is that they haven't been upfront. And they're also, the Wide Upper electorate, especially the Tararua district, has been traditional National Party supporters. Well, they're shitting on their own here, the National Party. Yeah. The Tararua district was basically the old Pāhia-tua seat, which was Keith Hollyoak's old seat. So it's a very strong National Party area. Incidentally, in those results, I got more votes than the National Party in that electorate, so I'm going to claim that one. But
by
no, look,
100. 7497 to 7397.
Back in 2020, my family's hometown, first time a Labor candidate has ever won Eketahuna, and I won it by 4 votes, and it's the proudest thing I've ever done.
There you go.
So,
just to play fair on our side, there's the 2020 election, so you can shine your glory in that one as well.
That's much better. Thank you. Anyway, I know you didn't get me on to talk about that, but look, I care very deeply about this region, and this really is so unfair. And it's quite clear why they're doing it. They have no money because they've made the wrong decisions. They're cutting money out of health. They're cutting money out of education. They've stopped Kaingaroa building houses. And Simeon Brown can't add up. There's a $6 billion hole in his transport budget, and they need to try and find the money somewhere. And it's the people of Tararua and Manawatu and Wide Upper and Hawke's Bay that are going to get stung for it when the road has been paid for. And what's also interesting is that they're starting to, this road has been on track and on budget throughout. It's the largest earthworks project in the country. It's a massive job. And the fact that it's going to finish on time is a huge achievement. All of a sudden, the government is saying that it's $200 million over budget. But if you go into NZTA's information, when they decided to put a toll on it, there was no talk of an overcostings here. It was still on track and on budget. Now, all of a sudden, this $200 million figure has appeared as if to try and justify the toll. Now, I'm not accusing them of making it up, but it is interesting, isn't it, that they've only brought it out into the public sphere because they're getting a backlash about the toll. But it actually is irrelevant, because what project has kept to budget over the last 3 or 4 years? The fact of the matter is, this road has been paid for. They should not put a toll on it because it's a replacement road for a broken one.
Yeah, we talked about this last night, that I spent a lot of time in Northland, and there's a new toll road that goes through and bypasses Orewa and bypasses Silverdale and those sorts of areas. And the thing is, you pay a toll to go up it, or you take Old State Highway 1 down through Orewa if you don't want to pay it, and it takes a bit longer, and that's a choice. When I asked you about that versus the goat tracks, it's like you don't, sorry, any government, you don't toll roads that are singular. If it's A to B and there's no alternative, you don't toll roads that are singular. But anyway, Chewy, you should be speaking, and I should shut up for a bit.
I just want to circle back on, National always hold up their support in the regions and the more rural areas as a, clear sign of the disconnect between the urban centres and the rural, really stoking that divide. That National are the only ones that can stand up for those rural folk rather than the latte sipping weirdos that live in Wellington.
Sorry, boys.
And then the first fucking opportunity they get, they pull this shit knowing that it's a few people. It's not even that many people. We'll concentrate on Auckland and stuff like that. And if we bottle these people in their area and they can't afford to get out to the telephone so they can tell people how bad it is, then it's fine. I think it reeks of a disrespect that cannot stand. And can I just ask, you mentioned that the national MPs were at this meeting, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Did they get up to speak at all or field any questions at all?
All they said, they got up probably about 2 or 3 times, and all they said was, "Look, we're here to listen," and then sat down again. So, and it didn't go down very well. Tangi spoke, and you saw snippets of that in the One News, and he spoke incredibly well. He's a really talented guy. And then I got an opportunity to speak later, and we spelled it out really clearly, because I feel this is personal for me as well. I've stood alongside that region right from the start. I was there the day we announced the funding, and it was really a blueprint on how to build a road in this country. Phil Twyford and I went to the local marae. There was a partnership agreement signed with the local iwi, and part of that partnership agreement was that we would employ local people and use local businesses. And it was such a good partnership that the consent went through the Environment Court in a single day. There was it's a massive environmental focus. Wow. There was no controversy about this, no dissent. It was just a unified approach, a real example. When it was clear to me that those council roads were getting absolutely shafted, the Mayor and I went to the Minister, and he switched it over to NZTA. When the proposed name came out and it only mentioned Manawatu, we did the same thing, and they included Tararua. There's a whole 7-year-long story about working with local government, local communities, and central government, listening and delivering. Mm-hmm. And now there's a stark contrast to this minister, who is just ignoring them and disrespecting them by even considering this idea.
I want to ask something else as well. That's got to be
quite personally infuriating to get a project along the way that close to completion and then see it fumbled so badly right at the finish line.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, in 9 months' time, there will be a fantastic new road that should be an example of how to build a road moving forward. I bet my bottom dollar this national government doesn't follow the blueprint, though. I can't imagine them coming up with a partnership with local iwi. The irony of the whole thing is this has been co-governance in action for 7 years and no one's noticed because they just got on with it. But anyway, that's a different yarn altogether. But no, look, this is what was going to be a wonderful story for this region has now been soured completely.
It's always interesting to observe this current government when they don't want to be challenged on what's happening within a government department. They say, well, that's for the CE. That's for the chief executive to decide. We don't stick our oar in. That's for the chief executive to decide. But then it's been in the past, and I'm just trying to think, Chewie, maybe you can help me. There was something for the Deaf Foundation that was going to be stopped, and there was a huge hubbub about it. And the CE said, well, this is the funding we've got. But then all of a sudden, the government stepped in because it was an embarrassment. And so when they want to wash their hands, they go, oh, it's the CE. There's nothing we're going to do. It's the CE's decision. And then when it embarrasses them, they sometimes step in and they overrule the CE. I wouldn't be surprised if they stepped in and overruled this tolling reason, because this is a huge embarrassment for them, Kieran.
Well, I hope they do, because if they don't, there's going to be a lot of good people that suffer. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to prevent. I hope they see sense. I think they are stained by this in our region because it is an act of bad faith, and they haven't fronted up to explain themselves. They've hid behind NZTA. I know they have a history of making these funding cuts, and when the outcomes of those cuts happen, they blame the department and say it's operational. Shane Reddy tries it all the time with health. They tried that with the disabilities, and you'll hear all about the impact of that later. They can't do that here because this is a direct result of an instruction that they made NZTA in June. And they tried to originally, the first questions we asked Simeon Brown about this, all he had to say was that NZTA are conducting a consultation. didn't mention that it was because he told them to, but that's come out now and they can't hide behind them. If you can't hide, you should front up.
Yeah. Hey, we're going to move on shortly, but there is one other thing I'd like to throw at you, off topic, but I think in your wheelhouse. We found it very interesting during Māori Language Week, the kind of what feels like tokenism that the Prime Minister offered to Māori Language Week while he's trying to remove as much Māori language as he possibly can from government departments, and the Cultural Minister's removing it from invitations to matariki and that kind of stuff. I saw another post from the Prime Minister today, and I do want to share it with you, and it was this one. 131 years ago, suffragettes secured the right for women to vote, a powerful victory for women in New Zealand and around the world. New Zealand was the first country in the world to secure this right, and we should be proud that our country led the world in such an important pillar of democracy. There was lots of comments down below, such as these guys want to get rid of the Ministry for Women, but there was one particularly, I think, curt and accurate tweet made of it by this young fella, Pat Brittenden, that said, yes, thanks to the New Zealand Liberal Party, a party grounded in social liberalism and progressive legislation, once again we thank the left for one of the laws that we lead the world in and are still proud of today. How do you feel about that, Kieran?
Well, you only need to look at their record, really. There's so many examples of this government saying one thing and then doing another, and they are walking back on all the momentum that we built around pay equity and closing the gender pay gap. And I think that speaks volumes, certainly more than a well-crafted tweet that I guarantee he didn't write himself.
Which one of the 7 social media people do you reckon wrote it?
One of the senior ones, I reckon. It was a pretty good tweet. So it's probably one of the senior ones, I think. Hey, Kieran, it's always a pleasure, mate. We love having you on. Never be a stranger. Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us tonight.
No worries. I appreciate you giving us the chance to talk about this because it's a really important deal for us. So thanks for that.
Excellent.
Not a
Catch,
problem.
Kieran.
Anytime.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And look, there is a bunch of people who are super chatting us and chatting us. We will get to that very shortly, but we are going to move into our next story because Katie is here with us in the waiting room. It's one of those fantastic moments, Chewy, where you go, how does this tech work on this planet, on this platform? So we'll just go and have a look straight away, and we'll go and say good evening and welcome to the show, Katie Thomas.
Oh, kia ora, Paul
Kia ora. How are you, mate? I've already told people about you and me podcasting and what we did all then and there. So you're already part of the family. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to see you again. It's been a while.
You too, mate. Yeah, really good. Okay. Now, the reason we're connecting is I saw an article on RNZ. Let's just be honest, that's where it's out there, about the 6 months on from the disability cuts.
Yes.
And I guess I'm a little bit embarrassed to think we should be doing more of this, Chewy. We should be realizing after the big news cycle has finished, these news items still affect people in their everyday life. And I just thought this is a really important thing to speak about and to speak to. And because you're someone who is experiencing this, I thought we'll just get you on. Do you want to tell us your story? Who are we looking at here in this picture with you? And first of all, just give us the background as to why you're involved with the disability sector and all of that.
Right. Well, that's my number one reason right there in my arms. That's Eddie. I have 2 boys. Eddie's my oldest, and he has ASD, autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, refractory nocturnal epilepsy, and some learning disabilities and some other musculoskeletal. So I'm not going to get into all of it because we don't actually have all night. Yeah. But he is my why, and he was my pathway. And funnily enough, he was my pathway to my own ADHD diagnosis. Not that that would really surprise you, but it's been, I guess, 10 years of navigating the disability caregiver path. And so sort of even prior to the disability funding cuts, maybe about a year ago, things escalated as they do, similar to the last time we caught up, actually, disruptions in his medication, and I had to shut down my business, which was no small feat, but it was growing and I couldn't manage that. plus the overwhelming burden of care on my shoulders, and
You're right.
he's
Okay.
more important. Yeah.
So you've now transitioned to a new government as someone who uses a sector, and as the article was talking about, 6 months on since the shock disability cuts, can you tell us how is it for you 6 months after the incumbent government made these decisions when it comes to you looking after your son, the benefits your son had, the resources he had compared to what's going on now?
It's night and day, to be honest. It's hard to know where exactly to start. I suppose we come under a couple of different categories when it comes to disability funding, but the pinch that I have felt the most is the changes to Respite. So right now here on my laptop beside me, and if you hear the bell ding, I'm going to run out of the room immediately, and I suggest you mute my microphone because it is a nocturnal epileptic. So his seizures happen exclusively at night.
Okay.
Hence why I'm up. I don't sleep a lot. And although technically you can use Respite for anything that gives you a break from caregiving, and I'm caregiving during the day as well, it's the stuff that I find really exhausting. The staying awake, the being screamed awake if I fall asleep. And I know that it's perpetual. We've just come out of winter, and winter is always, for any disability, I'm not just saying it's particular to epilepsy, but we all find winter incredibly challenging just because there's more germs. So all the immunocompromised whānau are struggling to manage and contain illness. And with illness, especially for something like autism, which is primarily an affect regulation disorder, it comes with behavior. So it's not just the sickness. You also have somebody who can't express the pain and discomfort that they feel. So you're fielding that, which depending on the child might come with some aggression or violence or self-harm, injurious behaviors. And for me to not be able to pay for somewhere to stay means that my only option is in-home respite. And if you can hear your son screaming through the walls, you're not getting the sleep that the respite is meant to afford you. You're also probably going to get up and do the caregiving that you're paying somebody else to do, just because it's not a job, it's a labor of love.
Can I just clarify? Can I clarify one thing, Katie? Because you can't go anywhere. Are you saying that under the previous government, respite care would be you'd go away and get a break for a night or something, and now that can't happen? Is that the actual change? The funding model has changed.
So the funding. So this is the thing. The funds might be there, but the exclusion criteria across the board, no matter which funding stream you're looking at, has changed so dramatically and so much. It's not like there was just that pause on March 18. The changes have been coming thick and fast up until last week. The other day, every time I ring up to confirm that my pre-approval for the things that I've already been assessed for Edward's needs is still valid, there'll be something new. It's like, oh no, you can't submit that it's out of date. And I'm like, what do you mean it's out of date? RDA, the Writing School for Disabled, just sent me that invoice. You can see on the email, it's not even 24 hours old, but the date on the invoice is outside this new exclusion criteria because they bill after Edward's done all the lessons at the end of the school term. And they're like, it's not a fresh invoice. I'm like, it's a fresh invoice. They just sent it to me. I'm a solo mum. I live in Auckland. So my living costs are just the highest out of anybody everywhere. And I'm not currently working. So now I'm saddled with debt and a boy who potentially can't continue something that is incredibly therapeutic. It's equine physiotherapy, and it's incredible for him. It's amazing for him. And he's already had to stop so many other things.
So Katie, because I'm a bit slow, and there'll be other slow people out there as well who will need us to count this. I really want to nail this down. You're saying that you do the activity, equine, did you say physiotherapy?
Yeah.
So he does that.
Mm-hmm.
You then get the invoice at the end of it, end of 10 sessions, 2 sessions, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You then take the invoice to the correct department within the government to get reimbursed like you would have done under Labor, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
And they say what?
They said, no, the dates are out and it's not fitting the exclusion criteria. It's like some recency. I haven't got it in on time. And I'm like, but this is new. And he's already done the lessons.
Yeah.
And it's something that's been pre-approved.
So what happens to that invoice of $600
now,
or whatever it is?
It's mine, and it's way more than $600.
Yeah.
it's way more than $600. So it's now my responsibility. I have to magic this money out of thin air after, the most expensive calendar month for me, because my power's through the roof and water's through the roof. I've had to buy extra medicines because he's been extra sick. And on top of that, I don't have, when I've got a sick child at home, like Edward's currently awaiting emergency surgery. So he's on the wait list. He's an high priority patient, but I've been told that for his type of oral surgery, the wait list is anywhere between, and I quote, 2 weeks and 2 years.
Wow.
I've never had Edward's, kind of always coming in for like acute surgery or emergency surgery. It's, it's never like, oh, this is an option. It's a nice to have. It's like no, we need it. We need it now. When we went in for one tooth last year that had a cyst, the Max Fax surgeon was like, okay, I'll see you, if not next week, the week after. That was really easy to kind of apportion time to. And ordinarily, with his current situation, which is 12 adult teeth requiring surgery, he's in a world of pain. I would never send him to school, but I also can't feasibly keep him home from school for 2 years. Plus, the school will be probably kicking us out because we're ruining their averages, by having him away. I'm not even joking.
Yeah, I got you.
The ableist rhetoric runs further than the disability cuts, but the impacts are really widespread.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly hard to pin it down. Like, yes, there was this quote unquote pause, which is obviously a hard stop, but there have been further changes to different funding streams all the time. And it's so destabilizing for me as a carer, but also for Edward. Like the worst, I think, was we just had his autism drama class just cancelled. Like, we can't continue. There is no funding. There's nothing left in the kitty. Next Friday will be the last lesson.
So that was a course that was paid for with government money. So rather than you getting invoiced, it just had to stop. Is that what you're saying?
No. So we paid a fee, but we didn't appreciate, the parents did not realize that there was a co-payment from government.
Okay.
And
the co-payment stopped. So that stopped the course.
Well, it was that, but it was also the timing, because carers who had previously been able to use their Respite or carer support to pay for their portion of the fees could suddenly no longer use it. And so parents weren't able to meet their contribution fees as well, because without that additional money from their kitty. So it was kind of like, it was from both sides.
Yeah, double whammy.
It was a double whammy. They were like, well, fees are not coming in on time or with, at the rate that they were previous. And I'm like, but you know why? And they're like, no. And so I kind of explained to them on their side, and they're like, well, also, we just do not have enough from our side. So even if everybody was paying their fees on time, and even if everybody paid the full amount, it still wouldn't cover the 100,000 gap that we have to fill. And I was like, yeah, we can't get
Katie, and I apologise to you for asking all the questions. You should jump in next to you. But the one thing I wanted to know is, you're obviously within that community, yeah? And I'm not trying to sound patronising with this question. It's a genuine question, because I also think about what people are wondering out there watching. Are you the exception? Is your story the exception? Or is your story
hell no.
is your story the norm? Like, is this the norm that's happening to
I
everybody?
don't even think I genuinely don't even think mine is the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
I was
That's
just
terrifying.
I was just talking to a mum today, whose son has been stood down from school for, meltdowns that turned violent because he had no support in school, because he had been denied ORS, because that criteria also needs to be brought in. So without
So
learning
like
support,
that means like no teacher aid assigned.
no
to them,
TA, not even an LA, not even like, not even some type of RTLB or IWS, which is like, these are transitionary supports, so they can kind of come in for like 6 to 8 weeks. Absolutely nothing. This kid had zero supports. And so instead of having somebody there who knew him, who could de-escalate the situation, it escalated. And so now he's at home and mum's had to stop working out of home. She works from home, but she's working full time.
Yeah.
And she has a high needs son at home who she's also somehow supposed to provide care for, who is twice her size and melting down. And she's had some of her funds. Yeah. I actually consider myself one of the lucky ones when I compare my actual lived situation with other carers, especially because the suicidality that I'm in contact with, I've never seen anything like it in my life, and I've been in this space for nearly a decade, and we all did lockdown together. And if your felt experience of that was perpetual fear and trepidation, you can kind of imagine that ours might be kind of like a level 10 up from that, knowing how vulnerable our kids were and watching the world feed the elderly and disabled to COVID-19 first. I still did not see caregivers and children fronting up and saying, I'm thinking about attempting, I just can't see any way out. I'm so beyond burnt out. My child is so beyond burnt out. We're being turned away from school. We've got no family. No one will help us. And I think I've only ever had a bout of suicidality once. And it wasn't the caregiving, although the caregiving was peak. What it was for me was that when I asked for help and when I told people I'm drowning, I really need help, it wasn't given when it would have been so easy for them to help. And that's the message from government, is people are putting up their hands and saying, I'm already in crisis. I need that thing. Whatever it was that was holding me together or holding my child together, you've stripped it away, and we're already on our knees. And it's that feeling invisible and worthless because somebody's assigned like a dollar value to you or to your child, and I'm desperate for people outside our community to see us and to reach in and reach out, because when we're not coping, we're not asking for anyone to fix us, but we just want people to know that things have never been worse. I'm comparing this to COVID. This is awful.
Chewy, do you want to offer anything? You're just sitting there listening. No, we don't. There's nothing we can actually say, Chewy, in this setting right now. Katie, you saying it all, but is there anything you want to offer as a part of this chat?
Katie, I've got a lot for you. I'm an ADD kid. I was a difficult kid growing up. But both my siblings have it as well, and I just remember how hard my mum had to fight. and she hasn't had to carry as much as you're carrying. But there's just a very familiar thread there. I know how important respite care was. I remember there's quite a big age gap between me and my brother. But he would often come down to me at my student flat and stay with us for school holidays as respite care. And it was always something that he looked forward to. He got to hang out with his big brother. But behind the scenes, I knew how important it was for my mum and my dad just to get a little bit of pressure release. And I remember this, exactly what you're describing, and this is 20 years ago, 25 years ago, of trying to do your best to fit into the requirements that the government departments are giving you, to get your invoices in on time, to meet their criteria for this funding that they make you really, really work for. And then you do something wrong, as you said, it's out of date. The wrong person signed it. That activity isn't approved. All of this sort of thing. It's this obstacle course of bureaucracy that's meant to make you give up. Because if they don't have to pay it, they don't have to pay it, right? That's a win. And I see a lot of people in the chat. We want to help. We want to. I mean, I'm just pulling it out of chat. There's a lot of people that are saying, "What can we do to help you? What can we do?" So we will sort something out. We'll talk about it offline, whatever. But I think I want to contribute. Chat wants to help. I'm sure Pat would agree with this. Yeah. It might be something, whatever we can do.
I think it's just that feeling is kind of what we need. It's not so much the what or the how or the who. It's the intent and I don't know. It doesn't really matter what it is, because at the moment it feels like nobody cares if we go. It really feels like and it's not just us. I think it's our kids. We feel like it's worse than feeling unimportant, to be honest.
You're never on the front page, are you? It's landlords, or it's ferries, or it's roads, or tunnels, or whatever.
Or the All Blacks.
And I think when people talk about the difference between left and right, this is it. Do we look after people that need looking after, or do we go, they're not visible enough? We can get away with cutting these people off from help and funding, and it feels cold and mechanical.
But it's easy because they know we're so exhausted. We can't fight. That's the thing. We cannot fight back on our own. It never stops. There's no time, and that's why that they're trying to really instill that hard no, so that we just stop trying and we just give up. I really think that is the plan, if there is a plan around inventing all of these barriers that didn't exist and fly in the face of all the enabling good lives principles and approach, and it's winding things back to quite a dark place.
Can I just ask this sounds a bit strange, but can I ask a logistical question? This government comes across to us as mean and vindictive and petty, like in general what they're doing. That's how we see them for a lot of things. How have you found the staff at, I'm not sure, there's the Ministry of Disability. Who do you speak to when you're looking for your invoices?
Right, so the way it works is the ministry doesn't.
Sorry, I was going to say, what I wanted to know was is that mean vindictiveness going down and into the people you're talking to, or are they still as sort of the same as they were under Labor? Is there any vibe with your face-to-face contact with people?
It really depends. So face-to-face with Whaikaha before Whaikaha was being disbanded, I was in part of the consultation that they had just straight after the announcement, actually, and it was around a different fund, and it was a different level of public consultation, and they apologised before the minister had, and they were very gracious and they were wonderful. However, from that time until this, it's not so much the interactions with ministry, although I personally do feel not only has that deteriorated a little bit, but I guess as their power's been diluted, so has their agency and advocacy on our behalf. But in the funding holders, so we don't deal directly to ministry, I might be a little bit of an exception. There'll be a handful of other advocates and carers who, make a point of going to all the things and as much as they can. I thought the turnout for that particular consultation was appalling. There was like half a dozen. The room was completely empty, except for like 5 seats. But in the funding hole providers, there's these they don't talk about our kids by their names. They've replaced client with PWS, and I think any time you're using an acronym in place of an actual human's name, and we chose client because we wanted to step away from pathology and let go of patient. The use of an acronym is really designed to rob someone of their personhood. There's no other reason why you would do it when you have a perfectly good shorter syllable name that you could use instead.
Yeah.
And we've heard some false claims being made by either, it's only a handful, and I don't want to blanket this because as a general rule of thumb, I actually think like NASCs are good people. They're great professionals and they're wonderful at what they do. But I have heard of a couple saying, oh, we don't recognise neurodiversity as a disability anymore. Like, who is this we? And what's their medical qualification? Because the specialist that my son is under didn't study for more than 10 years just to have some woefully underqualified person say, it's not a disability. It's not disabled enough.
This is my pledge to you, Katie. I will fight that person. You find out who it is, and I will fight them in the street.
Hey, Katie, this is a kind of a unique moment. I mean, you've been a broadcaster and a TV presenter. You kind of know how this game's played. I have no idea how to wrap up this conversation. Like, I have no idea how to, why to, what to do next, if anything. Maybe we can just throw it to you and just say, tell us something we can do. And I don't actually necessarily mean, flick a buck here or there. Like, what do we need to do that are the like we talk about being buffers. Like we had this conversation with Professor Margaret Mutu, and Chewy asked this fantastic question: what can we do as non-Māori, meaning literally us? And she said, be a buffer, stand in the gap. If they won't listen to us, maybe they'll listen to you. Is this needed in the disability sector? Are there buffers needed in there?
We need more than buffers. We need allies. And even if, when I say reach in and reach out, I'm not actually asking you to come to my house and care for my kid. I don't want you to fix me. I'm not asking you to do my life for me. What I mean is, not expecting you to understand the raft of things that are going on for me, but you could just be as simple as saying, I saw something in the news. Sounds like things are really hard for you at the moment. Are they? Because what turned things around for me when I was suicidal was somebody just being brave enough to say, are you thinking about attempting? And it was like, oh my God, somebody is giving me a hand in when I'm going under. I think it's really just that thing of being a good neighbour in the way that we were during lockdown, popping your head over the fence, or, just being like, it can just be the most basic thing, a regular text, or even, just popping into someone's DMs, just be like, it's been a while. Things are pretty sucky for everyone right now. Do you want to talk about it? And even if it's not, just knowing that somebody's noticing that you've gone absent can mean the world. Really does. when you're doing everything behind closed doors and behind curtains and nobody can really see into your real life.
And I guess the people watching now or listening in the, when it's an uploadable podcast, even though you're here speaking to us, you can be our representative of the neighbour or the person across the road or the person at the supermarket that we may know is in a some kind of similar position to you, and to think about that for them as well. So rather than thinking about just Katie, thinking about these people in our lives that we're connected to, that we can do that kind of thing with.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be big, but it can be if you want to. I know that Labour have just started up a petition to save Whaikaha. We would really love to save our ministry. It took so long to get one, and they have barely just gotten off the starting blocks. Every signature counts. Yeah. And if you're feeling bold and brave, don't be shy about calling up your local MP and saying, this is absolutely not what I signed up for. I did not vote for this. May have voted for you, but this is a step too far.
Katie, I want to stay in touch. I'm like, what we want to do here is make sure our audience is informed as to what's going on. I'm sorry to talk about it like it's a bit of a subject matter, but I'll stay in touch.
Well, it is.
I want to talk to you some more when that petition becomes more obvious to us. We want to talk about that, and just thanks for saying yes. Thanks for being brave and jumping on tonight and having a chat with us.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
We'll talk super soon, eh?
All right.
Thanks, Katie.
Right, take care.
Bye.
You can talk now, Joey.
That's a lot, man. One of the things I was going to say, for someone in that position, when you're saying how to be visible and how to let people know what you need, it's real hard to wave a flag asking for help when you're putting all of your energy into keeping your head and the heads of your loved ones above water. And I think there are so many people that wouldn't come within 100 miles of knowing what that's like. And when we vote for people and when they promise us things, it's really easy to make that about you or about the people that you know or the situations that you know. How many people are out there waving the flag for Katie or people like her, or families like hers,
or for their Katie in their life or in their neighbourhood? Yeah,
I think as much as so many of our shows are about lashing the government and just playing the political game, I think this really focuses, in my mind, what we're here to do when I think about changing the government and that sort of thing. Is it's more than my team versus their team. It is about people who don't have a voice, who don't have the visibility, don't have the spare time to do a podcast 4 nights a week. Is that we wave that flag.
When you kind of plan to do something and then all of a sudden there's something kicks you in the ass, like the conversation just had, because we do a lot of let's talk about what this is going wrong here and what policies this are, but it's not until you see the end result of that policy, it becomes real. And I just think that that this is probably, if I'm honest, one of many conversations based on legislation that has been passed, that we can't just spend a news cycle talking about it being passed and then forget about it. Because after it's passed, I guess that's when the rubber hits the road, and that's when stuff actually needs to be checked in on, maybe. And look, people in the chat have been saying, make this a clip. I always make clips. Every interview we do are clips. And there will be clips of the clips as well on things like Twitter and that sort of thing. So, tell Louise Upston about this conversation tonight. Let her know about it. Once it's up on, and I'll put it up on YouTube tomorrow as an individual one, send it to her, send it to other people, pass it around. I know that I often say you guys can be our advocates by sharing our news. I guess you can be the disability sector's advocate by sending this sort of thing around as well. Is there what's the actual website? What is it? What's the actual URL?
I just put it up on in the chat as well. It's change.org.
Yeah, Kiwi's good done that as well. So is that the one that's led by by Labor, sorry, or is that another one?
I am not 100% sure, but it is the one that's mentioned in an RNZ story from back in March. So yeah.
All right. Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people asking how we can help, and there's been some pledges made.
We'll talk about that, because I do also think that when we've supported causes in the past, it's been a bigger cause. I mean, we can do something. Let's just figure out how that's going to be and what that's going to look like exactly, and we can figure it out. I'm going to go through some of the chats now as a way to, I guess, move on to the last little part of the show, and I'll go almost backwards through the chats because the people who have watched this segment have been chatting most recently, and then I'll do the ones at the start which were about Kieran and what was going on there as well. So I'm just going to go literally backwards. Bubba says, your mental health is no joke. Seek support if needed. Mr. Arvid says, Katie makes me think of my mum too. I'm the product of my own mother's resilience during my diagnosis over 25 years ago. It was hard back then. It sounds much worse now. Gnats are demons. Brian says, thanks, Katie, for opening my eyes. Kia kaha. Kiwi Bird says, if there is anyone that supported the coalition the last election who has a heart, please stand up for the disabled people. Gareth says, for me, this is exactly why we pay taxes. Government, by default, should be taking care of these vulnerable people. 100%. Tiffany says, kia kaha, Katie, people have to look after each other because we can't depend on the current coalition to do it. Absolutely tragic state of affairs. Dun, 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 dun. I'll come back to that one. How about a new T-shirt or something to raise money for Katie? We care, Katie. You're not alone. Yeah, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about exactly what that will look like. And I think they're all the ones related to that conversation. Their one is kia kaha also. I was late, says Kooky Nick. Some other conversations, this might still relate, sorry. Luxon's mum set up a sitter service back in the day to give carers a break and help disabled people. Luxon cares more about his properties than her legacy. Okay. Gareth says, I think we found our new Friday night host. Peter says, they'll try to reduce it. Don't let the government get away with calling a reduced charge a concession. Anything more than no toll is at all is an outrage. So this is jumping back to the other conversation.
So was the previous comment the suggestion that Kieran needs to be our Friday night host?
Oh, he's got lots of spare time, hasn't he? I mean, you can't imagine that there's any issues there. Sorry, I'm just going to go and do a bit of deleting so I don't get overloaded with ones that we've actually already done. And delete. And we're done that one. Okay, yeah, so this is back to the conversation around Kieran and the toll. Mike Butterick, who was the MP who won that region, didn't even respond to his it's in the ballot invite. Kieran turned up remotely after getting called back to Wellington unexpectedly. Nice to hear. Spider Hoof. Hey, Spider, haven't seen you for a bit. Oh, yes, love seeing Kieran in the house. Kieran clips are super popular on my TikTok. P.S. Pat, I will probably add this content to my TikTok before your episode ends. I wonder if what she's actually doing is paying for, she's covering the royalties by doing the super chat there. And this is still in that conversation. No taxes but taxes, says Kiwi Bird. LLCJ has a tardy tax, which for people who don't know means they're paying for being late because they self-impose it. And David says, this is the last chat for now, do you guys hear that the CEO of KPIs doesn't care about frickin' targets? He has one imaginary job and he can't even do it. Lol, 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 lock. Yes, and thank you very much for that, David, because that's possibly the segue for us to move into the next part of the conversation, Chewy. Unless there's anything you want to add, you can add it now.
No.
Okay. So let's first of all go and have a look at stuff.co.nz's Tova podcast. Tova has done a podcast. I believe it was released today. The latest episode has been released today. And as a part of that podcast, she talked with Paul Goldsmith. And I mean, we all know this, but when they admit it, you know how like you go, I know my kids have nicked that. I know my kids have pinched whatever that is. But until they actually say, yes, I did it, there's always a bit of, come on, be honest with us. And then when they do it, it's like, oh, I can't believe you did it. It's kind of the same because he's admitted to her that they haven't assessed human rights impacts of the last minute gang changes. Now, that's not the patch law, but that's the amendments to the patch law at the very end to allow people to go into houses to find patch gang members to see if they're like living with a patch. That's what it's about. Let's have a look at the Tova podcast today.
Did you consult the Attorney General, Judith Collins, about these changes?
Well, yes, she's of course part of Cabinet, and she's written various reports on elements of it.
But these new changes that you've wedged into the legislation late in the piece.
Oh, yeah. Well,
did you consult?
Yeah, she's obviously part of the Cabinet. And
what did she say? Because she found the legislation before was inconsistent with the Bill of Rights, freedom of expression, association, assembly. She must have had serious concerns about this possession ban in someone's private home.
Well, I'm not going to go into the detail of the private conversations, but
it'll be public advice. It's Attorney General's advice.
And if there's any particular public statements that she needs to make, she'll make them. Of course, it has been pointed out that there is some breaches in regards to freedom of expression, and we accept that. That's true. But we as a parliament have decided, or will be decided when we pass this legislation, but as a government we've decided that actually, that the rights of ordinary New Zealanders to go about their lives without fear and intimidation is equally important, in fact more important. And so it's a matter of balancing these rights, and we're obviously accountable, and New Zealanders will have their say ultimately, but we're going to stick our neck out and say, well, actually, when we think about it, who are we most concerned about here? Are we concerned about the gang members, or are we concerned about the general public?
So what he's literally saying, right? What he's literally saying is, yeah, it's gang members. Okay, we get it. It's gang members. Not the most liked people in the country. But what they're actively doing is we're going to stomp on their human rights to protect their human rights. And you might find that there's not many people in the country that have a big problem with that. However, it's and there was no one left to fight for me. If we're setting up a government now that can go, well, we'll stomp on person X's, group X's human rights, then that could be something to be worrying about in the future. It's human rights for everyone or no one. It's like people always talk about free speech. There's no such thing as absolute free speech. There's some freedoms of speech. There are some restrictions. You all know about making a death threat or shouting fire in a theatre. So these absolutes that people use are difficult to follow through. So it's either all or nothing with human rights. You can't just choose to squash one set, even if they're the bad, scary ones, to protect another set. It doesn't work that way. We'll just get to the, unless you want to add anything, Chewy, we'll just get to the end of that clip.
No, roll on.
Right.
That's a yes, isn't it? A categorical yes that you got a Bill of Rights report from the Attorney General on these changes that you wedged in at the end.
Not yet on the additional ones. There may be something, I'm not sure.
All right, so you haven't actually consulted with the Attorney General on these new changes?
The Attorney General is well aware of them. She's part of the Cabinet that decided, but in terms of any specific...
This is very Weasley as well, just quietly, because we're asking questions based on the role as the Attorney General, and he's answering based on the role as a Cabinet member. We're talking about Judith Collins with a different hat on. We're talking about Judith Collins with that hat with the flower on the side. That's the Attorney General one. He's answering about when she's wearing the hat with the feather, which is the National MP one or the National Minister one. So these are weasel words, just so we're being clear.
Statements.
Yes, but police recommended in their advice to the police minister that these changes be consulted on with the Attorney General. You haven't done that?
Yes, she was consulted on them. Yes, absolutely.
But you just said, no, she hasn't been consulted on these new changes.
I said... No, you were saying that she made some new fresh statement on the new amendments. No, she hasn't done that. In no sort of particularly changed Section 7 report, nothing like that has landed, but she has certainly consulted. She was part of the Cabinet and made the changes.
There you go, Chewy. I've had a couple of cracks. What are your thoughts, sir?
Well, Mr. Goldsmith doesn't seem to know what's going on. Doesn't seem like they're talking to each other as much as he's saying that Judith was probably in the room when it was happening. Is any of this a surprise?
No,
Is any like, we get it. We don't like gang members. They're bad people, but they're still people. Human rights still matter. This is the thing. If you let people get away with this shit with people that society doesn't like, then it just becomes easier. That creep is easier. Now we'll find another group that we don't like. And then another one. You know, history's a teacher, right?
Yep.
Apparently not to this government.
Do you want to get to any of the chats if there's anything in there?
Oh, I did want to highlight one, and this is a complete change of tone, and I apologize for the crash of the gears here as I highlight it. But Pat, it does need to be highlighted.
Okay.
This came from the end of the interview with Kieran. Josie Cassidy, named in the chat. Thank you, husband. Oh, I mean Kieran. Somebody likes Kieran. Ooh. Sorry, I've been dying to do that the whole show.
I would like to move on to our last story of the week. And you're going to like this one, Chewy. I'm not going to look at the actual story. I'm going to look at the actual stand-up that the Prime Minister had talking about gang numbers.
Oh, how can we not have this?
Gang numbers, apparently there's 800 fewer gang members today than there was when Labor was in. How has that happened? Have their laws all of a sudden worked and 800 people have walked away from their patches? Or is there some tomfoolery going on? And I want to play this. This is the stand-up, right? So it's not the news story, but you can see the fear in their eyes when they get caught out. So let's look at it properly, shall we?
So far this year have removed about 800 gang members off the national gang list. What's your understanding of the rationale behind that?
Look, I haven't been briefed on any change around the national gang list. The police have a criteria for that. I've got Deputy Commissioner McSkibbing here if you want to talk to that, Jevon.
That's just, so you know, in the biz, that's called a hospital pass. Hospital pass going, hey, someone else can answer this one.
Kia ora, thank you. Deputy Commissioner, Operations, New Zealand Police. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, why have you've removed nearly 8% of gang members, you've taken them off the national gang list. Why is that?
Over the last year we've been doing a lot of validation about who's on the gang list and actually making sure that's accurate in terms of the definition. That is about hygiene and not actually making any significant change in terms of the definition.
Would you be taking like dead people off the list? Because that's been one of the arguments that people...
Well, that's exactly what we're doing. Hygiene is about making sure that that list is accurate to the people that...
It's very bizarre to call it hygiene. I don't know why that term gets used. I guess they're cleaning up the list, maybe?
We need to actually address that in gangs.
And you think we need to be careful then with statistics? Say, for example, if politicians are talking about, gang offending dropping, we'd have to be careful with that if the number...
We always need to be careful with statistics.
So just with the politicians here, you won't start celebrating the number of gang members on the...
Well, you haven't heard us do. You haven't heard us do that. We haven't heard you do that. That's right.
We've got some good progress.
You know what that looks like? It looks like the little kid behind the big kid going, "Come on, then. You want to go, bro? Come on, then." Jumping in from behind, getting all shitty, about to get pissy.
Happening here. Yep. And we've got a clear set of plans and a clear course of action and a changed posture and a changed position. But actually, let's be clear, we've got a long, long way to go.
We have absolutely. Just really quickly on Bennett's question around the national gang list. We recognise that it was actually, and the Deputy Commissioner's just highlighted, they're going through and sanitising it because they sort of identify that it's quite hard to come off it, and so they want it to be reliable data, and that's why they're doing work around that.
Did you ask them to do that?
No.
This is kind of convenient.
Ooh. That was a very quick no. If I was playing poker, I'd be all in after that no.
for the government to have far fewer gang.
No disrespect, but it's not about the frickin' targets. It's actually about the outcomes. And the outcomes here are actually reducing violent crime. And so we want to make sure we've got the best, most accurate, sanitised, clean data we possibly can. So I appreciate the base may be moving and that'll be what it will be. But it's important we have good quality data because that data actually drives a lot of actual actions from police officers going after gangs. So that's the important part. So, yep, we'll keep making sure the data's clean and it's hygiened exactly as it should be. That's exactly what we want to do. But what I'm interested in is the outcomes, and the outcomes have to be less violent crime incidents. And as you know, we've got a long way to go. We've got some examples of where we've got good results and good outcomes, and as you've seen in Auckland CBD, but we've now got a set of new laws on gangs. We've got a clear position and policy about how we want to operate and the stance we want to have with gangs, and we're going to go after that.
So, Chewy, there's part one. Now, to be fair with you, I had another part that I wanted to play, but I didn't actually queue it up. It's not about that. It's actually about the 500 police officers. I'm looking at my my screen here, and I might have found it because a reporter got a bit pissy with him and said there's 140 police officers fewer at the moment. I'm just actually, honestly, I'm doing let's do it live to see if I've hit the spot where that question was, and if it is, I'll mention something to you, and if it isn't, I'll explain what the question was.
On the Prime Minister's agenda today,
you know our deep commitment to get into 500 extra police. It's good to see that our recruitment efforts are actually at this stage are progressing well.
There are 104 fewer police officers today than there were when your government came into power. Why do you keep talking about 500 extra when we actually have fewer police?
Because that's our goal.
The police have, so far this year,
So,
moved.
this is the point I wanted to make. Apparently, when it comes to gang numbers, it's not about targets. But when it comes to police, that's our goal. Now, isn't a goal and a target exactly the same thing? So he gets pissy. No, I know what you're going to say. I shouldn't judge him based on his own words. He gets pissy.
It's very unfair.
And says it's not about targets when he gets challenged on the gang things. And then he gets pissy when he gets challenged on the 500 cops, and he goes, because that's our goal. So on one hand, it's not about targets, and on the other hand, it is about goals. Sorry, Mr. Luxon, what the fuck is the difference between targets and goals? Because it looks like on one hand, when you get caught out, that's not what it's about. And on the other hand, when you get caught out, that is exactly what we're trying to do. And I'm confused.
Well, look, I think what I'd say to you is this, Pat. What you need to do is take a step back and look at the bigger picture. These are all words, and words have different meanings. And if you guys could stop freaking focusing on the words that I use and just let me get away with shit that I want to get away with, this will all be over shortly.
But will it?
His lack of temperament.
No. I have to cut in. I have to cut in. Because in the thesaurus, for the word target, is the word goal. In the thesaurus, the word target and the word goal are together. So for the police officers, that's our goal for 500 as a way of defending himself. For the gang numbers, as a way of defending himself, it's not about targets. And no one else has pointed this out, except for this little pissant podcast from the bottom of the South Island.
This is very, very brave of you to think that Luxon has a thesaurus to hand. He's doing the TikToks. He hasn't got time to bring out his thesaurus.
You know what makes me mad? What makes me mad is we don't get access to be able to ask them this question. And mainstream media doesn't fucking think hard enough about he's saying the exact same thing and looking for a different response. It actually frustrates me quite a lot.
Yeah, he is. Look, I'm not blazing a new trail here. He is not very good at this. He wants the media to leave him alone and not call him on his bullshit. He wants to fling around these nonsense corporate buzzwords with zero pushback, because that's what he's used to. The media were not grilling the CEO of Air New Zealand about this shit. They would
That's what
just
it is.
see how the quarterly earnings were doing, and then they'd leave him the fuck alone. But no, he wants a knighthood, but he doesn't want to deal with this. So I'm going to throw Mark Mitchell under the bus, who is then going to throw the police commissioner under the bus, and then they're all going to stomp over each other to try and say the good thing. And then when they're called on it by the media, we're going to have a prime minister that says frickin', which is hilariously New Zealand. And so close to being the really funny thing of him dropping an F-bomb.
I wish he had have.
But if Jacinda had shown an ounce of this lack of temperament, we would have burned her in the middle of the street on a stake, because women are hysterical and shouldn't be leaders. But this fragile cue ball motherfucker loses his rag when someone asks a follow-up question 9 out of 10 times. It is ridiculous.
You're right, though. I mean, when I saw him saying frickin', that's the Christian word for fucking, by the way. When I heard him saying that one, I'm like, there's CEO Luxon losing his cool. You know, that's CEO Luxon standing in front of his head of departments going, this is frickin' not okay, guys. We're down by 14% in the third corner in the southwest. You know, that's what that is. And I'll say it again. You know, 500 police officers, that's our goal. You could say that's our target. 800 fewer gang members. It's not about targets. It's not about goals. It's the same thing, and it pisses me off that no one's called him out on it. Let's do some super chats. It not an either or, Willie Head. Not quite entirely sure what that means. Frickin' media with frickin' questions, Dr. Evil. But the frickin' lasers attached to their
like
heads.
Dr. Evil too.
Okay.
Photoshoppers. To your
graphic
machines.
Yeah, come on,
Why
graphic
is
designers
that
out there.
not being
We want a
done?
Luxon. We want a Luxon like this. This is what we want. A Luxon like this. It's not about
Mitchell is
frickin'
mini-me.
targets. No, Mark Mitchell is mini-me. Oh, sounds like a competition coming up. He's not very good at PMing, is he? Says Peter.
He's pretty
Mr. Arvid
good at
says,
PMSing.
the difference is they're synonyms, Pat. Synonyms, same. Thesaurus. Cool. And Gareth for the super chat. Q Chewy saying he's not very good at this.
Got him.
Got him. All right, guys.
Hey, Pat,
Yeah, man.
I don't wrap up the show. I want to power charge through something.
Thanks for joining us all tonight, guys. That's the end of the show.
You.
No?
You
Okay, sorry.
bastard. I could do this. Okay, this is for our people in Otipoti down in Dunedin at the moment, and this is for anybody that is from a region that relies on a regional hospital that is due for a rebuild.
Well,
Okay.
Yeah.
So that opens it up.
Yeah.
So we're building a hospital here in Dunedin, and we're going to cut it. No, we're going to go back in. We've had the government, when they were in opposition, saying that they weren't going to do any cuts. We've got a right-wing mayor who has been very, very weak on this. Our mayor flew up to Wellington to talk to Shane Retty and came back and said, Shane Retty's not going to make any cuts. On that same day, Shane Retty said that there were going to be cuts. So the people of Dunedin are going to the streets. One of the things, and see if this makes any sense to you, Pat. The cuts that Shane Retty mentioned is that it was unrealistic to expect a hospital to be built all in one go and unveiled.
Yeah, I had no roof. I reckon no roof to
And
start
that
with.
for some reason, it would be more economical and cheaper to build the hospital in modules over a series of years. Does that sound like the cheaper option?
Not particularly.
No. But here we are down here, all tucked away in the bottom of the South Island, and the government doesn't want to listen to us because they've got other things to spend their money on. But I noticed today that the rest of our council has gone, maybe we need to pull finger. So if you are in Dunedin, there is a
Both of you.
march planned. Yes.
Okay. After the Palestinian one? Is it going to be like Gaza, then everyone moves on to the hospital one?
Well, it is actually Saturday at noon, which is traditionally when the Palestine one goes on. So, yes, we'll see how road management goes there. The march will be held next Saturday, the 28th of September, beginning at 12 noon outside the dental school, and will be led by our semi-transparent mayor, councillors and clinicians. So I think this is where we kind of at as a country, that we've put up with almost a year of this government, and now people are going, well, none of our normal stuff seems to be working. Maybe we need to get to the streets. And I think we're kind of at that point. More.
Look, I don't want to be too much of an asshole here, but the idea of it involving the mayor, I'm just like, meh.
Yep. Maybe it's a good opportunity to talk to the mayor and tell him to grow a spine. That'd be good.
Yeah.
And just to contrast what we're talking about here, hospitals being cut, funding for families with people with disabilities, all of these things being cut. I just want to highlight very quickly before we wrap up, before Pat pulls my plug, just to show what is important.
It would have been very funny to kick you right then. That would have been most amusing.
I've got two things.
No, you go.
This is apparently important. Prime Minister says the tunnel option to replace Wellington's Mount Victoria tunnel is a really attractive option. This is the tunnel that they will build under the entirety of Wellington CBD. That's a good thing to spend money on. That's fine. And then this story. This is all on the same day, Pat. Wealthy people pay lower tax in New Zealand than in similar states, study shows.
Can I just say, you know how I just very cleverly pulled two different stories together to make Luxon look like a fucking idiot? Well, he talks about 0.25% of New Zealand committing 15% of the crime. Can't we do that with tax? Like
No.
the small, why not? Why can't we say
Can't
1/4 of
frickin' do
1%?
that, Pat. You're
But that's
talking
what I'm
about
saying.
my frickin' mates.
I'm sorry if consistency is an issue for you, Chewy. We might have to go through some counselling.
There's no money for counselling, Pat. It's only money for tunnels.
I want to show you one thing as well then. This is my little wrap up. All right. I've been playing on Twitter today, and I know I don't often, but when I do, I love it. This imagery has been going around the internet, and the anti-vaxxer brigade have got on board, and they've said that this girl got 3 vaccinations in a row, and this is an anti-vaxxer result.
Okay.
And the thing
What
is,
it actually?
the girl herself is playing into it as well. Listen.
Yes, Anaheim UCI, thank you. I appreciate that very much. It just doesn't make sense. Why would you give someone a vaccine when they have, you can literally see
So
that.
why would you give someone a vaccine? Now, I put a post out that said this. I'm sure you've seen this going around the internet, and I'm hugely empathetic for what this girl is going through. However, I'm skeptical about the vaccine caused this claim that many are taking, especially when you find out that she has, and this is a condition she has, a rare disorder when your immune system attacks red blood cells. And as of right now, there are currently multiple sites for her looking to raise hundreds of thousands of dollars. To be clear, I do not know if this is caused by a vaccine or not, but my bullshit nerve is a tingling. We'll find out. It'll come out one way or the other at some stage. And since then, beautiful people have got on board and said things like this. Superficial venous thrombosis is a part of PNH and is not a reaction to any of those vacancies. And some research put to it. Within that research are these photos from 2019, looking exactly the same, before there was a vaccine. So people, if you see that one going around the internet, and I've seen it by quite a few places, I would be happy enough to say right now, as is always the case, this is horse shit. And she has a condition, as many other people with that condition, you can show what happens. And they're trying to raise, ready for this, Chewy? $700,000 for her treatment.
Mm.
You know what the anti-vaxxers always say? They always say, follow the money. Okay, follow the money. They're trying to raise her $700,000, a strangely specific amount of money. That's what they're trying to do. There you go. That was my little tangent for today. That was me being I'll put on my white hat, my cowboy hat, and doing good by exposing some bullshit on the internet today. And I'm sure Tiffany is mostly talking about what I've just said when she says, "Thanks, guys, sharing so much important content lately," and am in awe to Mickey. Yes, I'm sure that last bit was the most important of it all. Is there anything else, Joey?
I think that's it. I managed to squeeze my tangent in.
Yeah.
But yes, whenever this government is cutting something, think about what they're not cutting. Think about what they want to fund.
And also think about, like we've done tonight, and I'm embarrassed to say we should have done sooner, what their cuts are doing to whom. And let's find those stories and amplify them. That's what I'm going to try and do.
100%.
Help us settle a debate, whether it be thoughtful or funny, even if we're all creatures of hate. It's a fine line that we're walking together. For better, push aside the temptation to berate. Let's take a note of the corners we stand in. As many points as the hairs on my chinny chin chin. When the news that we're watching is hairy, knowing all the things that we need to be wary of. Like the rich have their hand out for rewards, while the many have to work out what they can afford. And the rest of us ain't paying attention, or maybe have questions we're too worried to mention. Other media is still dwelling on trivial facts, vetting peas from the rice and the mice from the rats, and picking and choosing a war path to run, linking ourselves with the hill to die on. It's gotta come down to a welcoming vibe, with an A and a self and a higher in mind. All have a lean either this way or that, and will be analyzed by both Chewie and Pat. With the evil in the world trying to mess with your head, and you're sitting on the couch, you're thinking chivalry's dead. Each night, 2 nights, they're gonna sing you to bed. It's Big Hairy News.
All right, Big Hairy Whānau. It's time for us to head off to Nunai's land. And that's it for us. That's it for the weekend. I'm assuming this means lyrics for the song. Okay, I'll think about that. I also need to change the intro song, which I haven't got around to yet. That's just how busy I've been. Lovely to be with you. Thank you so much to all our guests tonight. A huge amount of love out to Katie and the story she was brave enough to share with us tonight. And look, be advocates, team, for whoever. This weekend, be an advocate for someone. Dunedin, go on the march. Be an advocate for someone. Share the stories around that Katie told tonight. Let people know about it. Step in the gap. Be in the middle of something that doesn't affect you and help that group or person in a way that you can. And we will catch you all from Monday. That's it from me, Chewie.
That's it from me too. Cheers, fam.
All right, team. Kia ora. See you next time. Hooroo.